State Department Deputy Spokesperson Vedant Patel on Wednesday marked 40 days since the wrongful death of Mahsa Amini in Iranian custody. He lambasted Iranian authorities for her death and for killing several others during ongoing protests. Patel announced new sanctions on several individuals and entities that he says are responsible for Iran's repression. Patel condemned the Islamic Republic's, quote, flagrant disregard for the fundamental freedoms and human rights of Iranians, and promised the U.S. will continue to take more action to support the people of Iran.
One more thing, it has been 40 days since the death of Mahsa Amini in the custody of Iran's so-called morality police. We join her family and the Iranian people for a day of mourning. In the past 40 days, Iranian authorities have killed hundreds more in a brutal crackdown to suppress peaceful protests sparked by Mahsa's death, including many more young women and girls. Their bravery in continuing to lead protests in the face of this crackdown is an inspiration to the world. Today, we are announcing a joint action between the State Department and Treasury Department, designating 14 individuals and 3 entities using 5 different authorities. These newly sanctioned individuals and entities represent a range of those responsible for Iran's repression. There are senior leaders of the security apparatus, mid-level officials who have believed that they could commit abuses against their neighbors while preserving their anonymity, and organizations and individuals who have attacked the Iranian people's ability to use the internet to communicate with each other and the world. Peaceful protests by large numbers of Iranians are now well into their second month, as is the Iranian regime's attempts to violently suppress them. The regime's ongoing violent crackdown, pervasive surveillance of citizens, and disruption of communications are the latest reminder of the Islamic Republic's flagrant disregard for the fundamental freedoms and human rights of Iranians. We will continue to look at the tools at our disposal and take action to support the people of Iran as they peacefully protest for their human rights in the face of brutal repression. Matt, if you want to kick us off.
I didn't have anything to start, but since you went on a little bit at length about Iran, I will ask you this. The other day, Ned was quite reluctant, in fact, loath to and would not ascribe any motive or ascribe describe what the calls that you're seeing from the protesters are. Are you at a point now where you're able to say with some certainty that you know what the protesters are demanding?
So I don't have anything new or different to offer from what Ned said. Iran's leadership is facing a problem of its own making, and it continues to accuse the U.S. of instigating these protests. And let's be clear, these protests are about the Iranian people and their demands. And we also are trying to be very careful to not play into the regime's disinformation about the United States being behind these protests. And our policy is designed around finding practical ways to support the Iranian people with the tools that this administration has in its arsenal to support the Iranian people in the face of the brutal, violent crackdown, the internet disruptions, and the denial of basic human rights and the state-sponsored violence that we're seeing.
So it's fair to say then that your reluctance to give a description or to say what you believe the Iranian protesters want is because you're concerned that by doing that you will play into the government's allegations that the U.S. is behind it?
Well,
is that it? Or is it?
I think the key takeaway here, Matt, is that no one, not myself, not Ned, or no one in the U.S. government should claim or can claim to speak for these protesters. Only they can do that. And our role is to continue to take steps and take practical efforts to use the tools at our disposal to hold the regime accountable for what we are seeing happen across Iran.
Well, but I don't think anyone's asking you to speak for the protesters. But what I'm asking you to do is to say what your understanding is of what their demands are.
Again, Matt,
I don't understand how that's speaking for them. If you can
I appreciate your question, and I understand what you're asking, but that is not for us to characterize. What we are seeing is the Iranian people demand basic human rights, rights of expression, as this started in the death of Masa Amini, and we're seeing the Iranian people make their voices heard. But I don't have any other specific assessment to offer.